also too, my poetics. Like for me, as a poet, as someone who does engage in sound art and spoken word, what I write, I am also to embody through my voice.
That was poet, activist, and scholar Thea Matthews. I'm Jeff. Welcome to Storied San Francisco, a weekly podcast where San Franciscans from all walks of life share their stories, and you get to know your neighbors. In this podcast, Thea picks up where she left off in part 1, talking about her poetry. She charts her journey through City College and UC Berkeley, and her eventual move from the Excelsior to the Sunset. She reflects on the current uprising for racial and social justice. And she ends this episode by reading 4 poems from her book, Unearth the Flowers, which is available at Green Apple, bookshop.org, and most local bookstores. Thea will be giving a reading at the launch party for the book on June 27th. Please visit our website's episodes page for more info, including the Zoom link and password. Here's Thea.
Again, like I wasn't raised by, like there was no communication with my Black family till adulthood. So we're talking like two and a half decades of silence, absence.
But which would you say came first? Your art, your involvement in punk, or just a general kind of awakening of politics and, you know?
Poetry came first. I started writing when I was an adolescent, and writing poetry for me has been a way to communicate the unseen, communicate what is felt internally, and to have this bridge between me and you, between me and the reader. Definitely art as an act of expression, art as a political act, and as a feminist, Black feminist, and always, even to the content of what I write about, the personal is political. Personal is always political. And so what I wrote initially was definitely like the feelings of like, you know, teenage angst, wanting out, you know, freedom. But a lot of it too is like always this attempt, this strive to break silence. Poetry as an act to break silence and break stigma. From where I come from and with what I've been through. And then what I get to see too, right? Like, I think the next tier of writing that I hope to explore would be more so utilizing art as a way to envision something new. Definitely identify myself more as an observer and an active ethnographer, where I'm participating in the world, but I'm also like here to document it through poetry. And where I write from my experiences, from my memories, from my observations and interactions. But then also too, like, what are the points I want to make? What are the messages? I love the Psalms. You know, that is the original poetry book, right? Like, but like the songs, you know, like early influences like Shel Silverstein, you know, and as I got older, I became a little bit more sophisticated, right? And reading other works that have influenced me. And like now, I mean, there's a whole slew of poets, but as, you know, in the stages, it was like reading Sylvia Plath and Emily Dickinson, a little bit of T.S. Eliot, and then like reading more of like the beat poets and like Allen Ginsberg, and then getting to like Amiri Baraka, Bob Kaufman. And then when I started to enroll in Poetry for the People, that's when I really was like catapulted in the next tier of like the work of June Jordan and like Black feminists of Audre, you know, such as Audre Lorde, Pat Parker.
Was that at City College?
That was, so P for P, I took that at UC Berkeley. I did take a poetry class where there's like Alejandro Mujeres. Like there's like a lot of poets. I should probably know more. I'm sorry, I'm not always that best with like name dropping everyone that has inspired me, or yeah.
That's okay. It sounds like there's a lot.
There's so many, and thank God, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's like we're trained to only have like a forefathers or like the canon of like the small nucleus group of like tends to be white people, when there's really so much diversity of experience of the voice
When did you start reading poetry in front of people, and what was that experience like?
Ooh, that's a good question. I wish I could recall my very first like open mic moment, or like the time I read a poem out loud.
But they said you always remember your first.
No, right? Normally, if I go enter into another dimension of life, I do. But yeah, like I remember the act of writing my first poems. Like that I'll always remember, of like just the binder paper and the blue ink, and like I think it was in the evening. Yeah, I do remember writing my first poem and sort of saying reciting my poem aloud. I started doing that when I was a teenager, and then took some time off. Like, so for a few years, I was part of Writers Corps, and where I was a peer educator and also active in the literary arts community as a youth, where I would deliver poems in multiple events. That was really beautiful, and that was cool. And like the largest crowd was a packed house in the women's building. It was my very first publication. I was part of an anthology, City of One, that Writers Corps put out, and that was awesome. That was, oh my God, I remember being like so nervous. And yeah, definitely there was doubt. There was this fear, like where I would feel like the voice shake and rattle. As I got older, it's much more easier for me. I think because as I get older, I'm like, I don't care. And it's actually quite cathartic. And also too, my poetics, like for me as a poet, as someone who does engage in sound art and spoken word, what I write, I am also to embody through my voice. And so much of my endeavors as of now has been, have what I say be potent on the page, just as potent as it is with me speaking. Because I know that this is powerful. I'm grateful to speak. I'm grateful that the words I say, like, shit, dude, it's so funny. Like, getting hella biblical with it, of like, was it the Gospel of Matthew or John, where it's like, in the beginning there was the Word. And it's like, the Word, the Word does have power. And to embody the poem, that has been really much a spiritual experience. At times can almost feel selfish in a sense, because it's so much of a release. It's this reciprocal exchange, right, between the poet and the audience, and it's also an offering and a gift. And I say selfishness only to the extent of like how much it benefits me, where I hope it benefits you, but I know for a fact this is like movement. To say a poem with intensity, or to embody the slick movements, or like to play around with tonality and intentionality of each word.
Yeah, and vulnerability. I mean, you said it's gotten easier. Do you still feel that vulnerability when you perform your poems?
I do. I can get sometimes nervous. I mean, yeah, vulnerability is interesting. I love Brene Brown, right? Where like I choose courage over comfort, where vulnerability is that strength, is that willingness to walk through fear, to be in that arena. And it's empowering. So much of what I do as I engage in my craft, taking on the identity as a writer, as a poet, I validate myself. I validate the experiences. I affirm and bear witness to my own testimony, right? Same thing with like saying it out loud. It's like, yes, there's a sense of trust, but it's just, I don't know, it's kind of just diving into the pool. Like you can't just think about it. Like then the time just goes by and you never got your ass in the pool.
Yeah.
You just dive in. But I don't think too much about it anymore. And it's, sometimes if I feel like the content is off a little bit from the theme of the event, whatever, right? But like, it is something where it's like, look inside. Like that's part of the offering. As part of the responsibility of the artist is like, here, look, like here, this. Because then afterwards I'm just buzzing. I'm like, Yes, yes.
And then you're right back at it the next day or the next week, doing it again. We've kind of, I guess, touched on here and there, like City College, Berkeley. If you want to go into, more detail about your experiences at either of those places, or coming back, did you move over to Berkeley when you?
I didn't know. I commuted, which
Okay.
was a long ass commute, like 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
But I can talk about too, like as a Black queer woman. That's something too. Queer. As a Black queer woman in San Francisco, it's interesting. In a sense where stepping into these identities, right? Like these, or like taking more ownership of like, what does it mean? Like, I say who I am and this is what I portray. How does the world see me, And, when I've been arrested for political demonstrations, they just put Black, they don't want to get like, are you Black and Latin? Are you, there's no question, like, it's just like, you're Black, it's kind of just like this writing this off. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I don't have really much to say. I was thinking of like, I don't have any crucial, like, I mean, I guess I do, because yeah, you said something positive, and it is funny. When I have my fro out, we'll see, tomorrow I plan on having my fro out. The compliments are endless. It's like, yes, white folks can gawk of like, oh my God, that's, I'll get like some stupid comments. I was like, is that your real hair? Or, is that a wig? Or just like, where is your filter? But if anything, I do get a lot of affirmation of my beauty. And that's been like within like the last 4 or 5 years. Like since I've gone natural, like since I've dismantled this internalized Eurocentric of beauty. What am I trying to say here? Like that, yeah, Eurocentric aesthetic of beauty. Once I dismantle that and like claim like, okay, this is all of me. I felt like the world was like, yes, girl, about time.
We've been waiting for you.
Like, welcome, come, like, you good, like, yes, it was, yeah.
Was there anything about your experience, I know you said you commuted, but like anything about your experience at Berkeley that, like going back again to what I was calling that contrast of like, being over there, even though it's still the Bay, it's different. And then coming back here, obviously you don't live in the Excelsior anymore. Like, what was that part of your life like?
I don't, yeah, so Berkeley was different. I mean, Berkeley, I transferred in and it was like, honestly, like my nose in the books, like for 2 years straight. I did work on a paper, like a lot of it, I came out more of speaking to the Me Too movement and looking into transformative justice measures in regards to how communities of color approach child sexual abuse as a social problem. Mm-hmm. As a survivor of incest, like that was what I was geared towards as well. Like, and that is what excited me. But like, yeah, I mean, that is a big campus. UC Berkeley, I've gone to some lectures where 200 plus students, I can count the Black people on one hand present. And so, yeah, it was pretty low, I mean, I know I exist. I know my people exist. And it's unfortunate. There's definitely, I've gone and been part of spaces that really I have honored Black people, Black and brown people. But I've also gotten used to like, all right, like the army of one today. Mm. Especially living in the Sunset. Fuck, I mean, like literally army of one. And when I see a Black person, I'm like, hi. But I know we are out here though. I know we exist. I know that Black people are in the future, and this faith gives me comfort and a sense of calmness. Certain times, don't get me wrong, I will definitely feel agitated, angry that like, how am I the only one in this conference room right now? How am I the only one in this lecture hall?
Right.
it is painful. At the same time, there's a sense of faith of the unseen, right? Where there's something spiritual of like, I know I'm not the only one. And a lot of my politicization came at City College. First, in terms of like looking into the fight for public education, fighting to keep CCSF accredited. That was when I dove into socialism and Trotsky and Lenin and like became political and got my feet wet with what does it take to actually organize a march? What does it take to organize teach-ins? The importance of education, the importance, radical education, right? For the revolution. That was like where I learned all that at City College. I love City. I wouldn't be the woman I am today if it weren't for City College. San Francisco, hands down. And then 2013 hit. 2013, 2014, right? Mm-hmm. So the breaking point for me, when I said enough is enough, and mind you, it takes what it takes. I almost like, it doesn't matter. But like for me, like my antennas went up with the murder of Michael Brown Jr. You know, it was around the time of Trayvon Martin. I've heard of Oscar Grant, and that Oscar Grant was done in the bag, fucking Fruitvale. Right. But the footage too, I don't know, something with the story, you know, it just, we all have our entry points. Right. We all have, I don't even know if I can fully explain it, right? But it's like someone will have that, like, where it really struck that chord in my heart. I was like, oh no. Like, oh no. And then, you know, George Floyd is not the first Black man to say, I can't breathe on camera. So Eric Gardner, that was when, and then of course, right, these police officers weren't acquitted, or they were acquitted, I forget the language. Basically, there was no justice served. That was like, okay, whoa. And the beautiful thing of students, right? Like students lead the revolution. Students, like student-run movements are the most powerful. Absolutely. And so as an undergrad, what we were able to do was one, resuscitate a Black student union on campus, right? Create a haven, create the sense of like space to bring in community, to like lock arms with allies, with other POC folks, and to say, okay, well, we are BSU, what are we to do, right? What are our demands? What are we striving for? What could we create with the resources we have? The students have resources and they have there's strength in numbers, right? So it's like milking the institution, but also like finding radical, like-minded individuals. And then also too, students with their teachers and advisors. Like it's not just students out of nowhere, right? It takes so much. It's like everyone has a part. And so
it's like learning from the earlier generations, our elders, but then taking that and
carrying on. Yeah.
Doing the fight. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was at City College? Sorry. That was
at City College. Okay. And so Black students, so the CCSF BSU, you know, we were part of organizations that helped run like Millions March in San Francisco, and we're part of other like demonstrations. And so that was really awesome, you know, in terms of like taking a stand and joining and being actively being part of Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. You know, and then things got a little quiet, you know, a few years passed, as time does. Yeah. You know, we have a little pacifier, so to speak. Not really, but you know, just wait for it, you know, and we have 45 coming in. Building momentum. And then now here we are with national, global uprisings, and it is absolutely glorious.
And like you said, a lot of it is led by kids.
Students. I wouldn't call them kids, like young adults.
Students.
Youth. I mean, kids in a sense, you're right? And honestly though, like when you see like an 85-year-old, they'll call you a kid. Right. So a kid is arbitrary. right. You know, because like the youth, like the Zennials, you know, are just like, we had it. And like,
is that the name? Zennials?
Yeah, well, I'm saying Zennials, but yes, like the Generation Z is out right now.
I heard Z. I never heard Zennials. I like that. Because I'm always like, well, what are we? Anyway.
Yeah, the Zennials. I mean, we have the Millennials that were like, I mean, we tight, we good, you know, but of course it's like that next generation, and like, it's never ending. And so it's like, and I think too, no matter what the age is, we can be part of it, we can be of youth, and we can be also the elders, you know, like, it's that wisdom acquired, and it's the service of helping each other. And yeah, it is often student run, and just the coordination and communication right now is just on point. I mean, of course, we're humans, so of course, best believe there are flaws and mistakes and shits coming out sideways here and there. But overall, what a wild time to be alive.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on, or I guess your hopes for what's next.
Oh, thank you. My hope is that we don't stop, that we keep on with this marathon. Don't treat it like a sprint, but treat it like a marathon, and keep our eyes on the prize for abolition. We're done with reform. We demand abolition of the hyper-militarized police state, of orange men playing dictators, of systemic structural racism that permeates the family to schools, all institutions, really. Yeah, that's simple. I mean, of course, we can make it complex, right? How we're gonna get there? What do we need to arm ourselves with? How do we then like disband and defund the police in all these different cities? And you know, because we are in a civil war, and there may be more bloodshed, and it may get worse before it gets better. Like I said, like abolishing what no longer serves us and completely redefine and reconstruct the trusted servants in our communities. That's what I really hope for, right? Of justice and starting anew. How do we start anew, right? Because we're just relying upon a system that is inherently flawed, inherently racist. No matter what we try to mask it with, it is not meant to serve all of us.
Right.
Same goes for the Electoral College. Same goes for the Constitution. I love the United States. I'm grateful to be born here. I am so grateful to be here and there's challenges, right? And there are definitely challenges, but that goes to everywhere. You know, this is where I'm at. So what can I do to be of service, right? I mean, you have Alice Walker's quote, right? Like, the price of rent I pay to live on this earth is activism. Oh, actually, I want to say it verbatim. I just like dyslexic paraphrased it.
It still sounded good.
Thank you. But she says, quote unquote, like, activism is my rent for living on the planet, right? And so the activism, you know, is what we do. It's like, what can we do to keep Mama Earth all right, and to treat each other with respect? Like, how it's that simple, but yet it's tough because there's fear, there's greed, there's emotions, right? There's like this greed, in my opinion, capitalism, hello. And so for me, and what many Black feminists, and what comes to mind too, is Toni K. Bambara, of like how revolution starts at home. Actually, Fanon too, revolution starts within. So what I hope too is that many of us continue on with this marathon, looking at our own lives individually and how we interact with others one-on-one. Because as an activist, I've had to be checked. Oh, have I had to be humbled by how I treat others, right? What am I doing that could be unjust, you know, with how I speak, with what I say? You know, if I'm going to demand accountability from police, then who's going to keep me accountable too, right? Like, so it's this like shifting and changing the language where we stop policing each other, but we call each other in for accountability.
Before we wrap, do you want to read any more poetry?
Always. Thank you. I feel bad.
Can we hear something that you because I heard a little bit on Bitch Talk. Anything that you have on flowers?
Yeah.
Let's hear something about flowers.
Thank you. And like, I feel like I talk better with poetry. I'll be right back. I'll get the book.
Okay.
It is available for pre-order now. The official publication date is June 20th.
How do people find it?
You can search for it at Green Apple. You can contact your local bookstore. It is available on Bookshop and I would just say it comes out and it is available.
Awesome. You said Green Apple. You had me at Green Apple.
Okay, great, cool. Gazonia. I alone extinguish that raptorial yearning to taste butter on tongue, rub honey between fingers. Tangerine lips pucker up for a kiss when planted in full sun. When dresses silhouette the galaxy of my body among sequin stars, rhinestone laughter. I open when planted in full sun. Flow of Oshun, I exceed the price of elephant tusk. Fresh waters bow, continents offer, ripe oranges and cinnamon to boil the bones of who stole my mother's body. Azalea. Do not underestimate my power. I am woman. The divine feminine, my time is now. I barricade the drilled wells once punctured into my womb. I excavate each hook oil pipeline once pierced inside me. My skin, the cerise, my body, these petals cannot be stretched any further by despotic hands. My water is sacred. My love is pure, despite contamination and abuse. I fought to live, now live to thrive. Do not underestimate my power. I am woman. Fuchsia. And this poem closes the collection. Oh yeah. Oh, I'll close with the last poem, or no, I'll read you the last poem and then I'll read you the prelude. So Fuchsia. Believe me, my cracked lips and stained tongue, a burning stomach and a no backbone bedroom did not deter the swift flight of endurance, the remembrance of sweetness, of survival. Hummingbirds came once I tasted my tears, yet sometimes I still close my eyes to the sun. I see the glaring red of my florid skin, swollen inside, irritated, infected from pesticides, the warmth of invasion of his cold fingers inside. I cry, growl, slice arteries with teeth. I wrestle with the treachery of men until I twirl prayers into beads of nectar, break the hex of hatred, ground the betrayal into fertile land. I grow from the whispers of shh, don't tell nobody, fingers over lips. Today my mouth, like legs, rests wide open. Believe me, he knew someone would. And then this one's the prelude. Unearth the abuse, repetition of bruising the spirit, the silence 2 o'clock in the morning, the mother in silence, the memories of a child, the child, mother, stolen, the generations like weeds ossified, the apathy of those already dead with a pulse. The time said once more, shh, don't tell nobody. The refusal to believe me when I tried to speak, the suffering of seeking vengeance, the vengeance to kill, The rage inflaming my body, the truth on my lips, the screams in the back of my throat, the cries trapped in my teeth, the tongue clipped, now regrown. Unearth the flowers.
That was Thea Matthews. Please join us tomorrow when we'll be talking with Season 2, Episode 49 storyteller Chloe Jackman about current issues. Music for Storied San Francisco is by Otis MacDonald. Photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. The show is hosted and produced by me, Jeff Hunt. Our website is storiedsf.com, where you can now browse more than 120 episodes that we've done over the last 3 years. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. If you see an option to rate and review what we do, we'd really appreciate it. And if you have any feedback or people you think should be on the podcast, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay safe, and stay healthy.